Interesting story coming out of New Jersey. Legal marijuana foes offer a compromise. Decriminalize it. So this is interesting. They say that the bill would allow a person caught with less than 10 grams of cannabis to face a fine of $100 the first time, $200 the second time, and $500 for future violations. As of right now, offenders get 6 months in jail or a $500 fine or both. And the bill also expedites the expungement process for past marijuana arrests and allows municipalities to keep all but $50 from every fine and makes treatment services available if offenders are determined to be marijuana dependent, which is a little bit of a weird concept there. I think there's a debate as to whether or not that even exists as a thing, marijuana dependent. But, so this is, incrementalism, gradualism. To be fair to the politicians who are pushing this, it's better than what they used to support. So they used to support, no, we're going to keep the laws as they are when it comes to marijuana. But now they've decided, okay, whatever, we'll meet you halfway and we'll decriminalize it. So instead of legalizing it, hey, we'll just make it so that, you get a fine instead of going to prison or going to jail. Okay, but, at the end of the day, though I would support this if this was the only thing that was on the table when push comes to shove after all the back and forth and all the negotiations, the answer is legalize, tax, and regulate, and everybody knows it, and we're still going really fucking slow to get to that point. And I think that's one of the things that Americans find so frustrating on a variety of issues, is that we have our mind made up on many issues where the government basically tells us to go fuck ourselves and they don't represent us. And I'm talking in a bipartisan fashion, too. I'm talking Democrats and Republicans among the voters agree on certain things, but our government says we don't give a shit that you agree on those things. And, this has really made me appreciate the idea of a constitutional direct democracy. Because if we had a constitutional direct democracy, guess what? We'd already have Medicare for all. 61% of Americans want Medicare for all. We'd already have legal marijuana. Same number, actually. 61% of Americans want legalized marijuana, not just decriminalized, legalized marijuana. And you go down the list of the progressive priorities, and Americans are crystal clear. 80% want to raise the minimum wage. 80%. Only 17% of Americans still want us to be in Afghanistan. And that poll is going back to 2013. As the most recent one I've seen, I'd imagine that number's even lower now. So if we had a direct democracy, maybe we'd be out of there. Now, the reason I say constitutional direct democracy is because constitutional issues are off the table, they're non-negotiable, they're not debatable. So in other words, if you're in Mississippi in the year 1956 and you take a vote on whether or not there should still be segregation, segregation would win in a landslide. People would democratically have chosen segregation. But what's the problem with that? That doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right. So the whole point of a constitution is you give people rights that are off the table, not open to the democratic will of the majority. You're not taking away the rights of the minority on the whim of the majority. But if you have a constitutional direct democracy, then you can take certain things, put them off the table, and then everything else you give people democratic control of their lives. And again, if you do that, you'd see that this country is basically in favor of a Norwegian-style social democracy. So I think it'd be much better than what we have right now, no doubt. Because right now we have wanton corruption, and there's a reason why politicians drag their feet on issues like this. Why do you think it is that even though 61% of Americans want to legalize marijuana, the federal government's not doing it, and in fact they're doing the opposite? Jeff Sessions is cracking down on marijuana. Why is that? Well, it's because Big Pharma has bought our government, and they don't want legal marijuana. The alcohol companies have bought our government. They don't want legal marijuana. They view it as their competition. So, and the DEA, by the way, everybody at the DEA, their job is dependent on drugs continuing to be illegal. So they lobby to not move in the direction of legalization with these, with drugs and with marijuana and with a variety of issues. So that's the problem We have institutional forces that have momentum and money and power, and they're fighting back against the will of the majority. And we all fucking know it, and we all hate it, but not much is done about it. And then the best we get is compromises like this, where it's gradualism and incrementalism. Again, at the end of the day, if this is the only thing that's on the table, it's sort of like Obamacare. At the end of the day, the Democrats had caved so much, and if I was there, just like Bernie Sanders, I would have said, look, I want a Medicare for all system, but if this is all that's on the table, okay, I'll take the fucking half measure and do Obamacare. Bernie Sanders voted for Obamacare when all was said and done. But he did it as he was saying, this is still not the answer, and we still have to keep fighting for Medicare for all. So by the same token, I think that philosophy applies here, where you go, no, the answer is to legalize, tax, and regulate, and I will, through gritted teeth, vote for the decriminalization, but we have to keep going further. And the way that you really get the change that we all want to see implemented is to fundamentally change the system and get clean elections where you get private money out of the elections so that we can make decisions more based on an ideological debate and the will of the people versus having a debate of dueling donors.